All right, guys.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How are you? I'm doing well. So I thought I'd start off with a quick joke. You know, this is always risky, but I thought I'd try. So this older gentleman decides that it's time for him to get a new sports car. So he heads down to the dealership just down the street, picks himself on a nice Corvette, takes it out on 94. He's impressed at how sweet the ride is, rolls the windows down, cranks it up to 70. He said, "This is really nice. I wonder how fast it will." He hits 80, 85. Pretty soon he's going 100. And he's thinking, "Boy, this is awesome." And all of a sudden, woo, in the background, he panics. What am I going to do? He pushes the gas pedal to the floor. He's up to 110. He's like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" So he slows down, pulls over. The cop comes up behind him, walks up to the door, sees him. He's not a 16-year-old kid, an older guy. Said, "License and registration." Guy hands him the stuff. The cop walks back, comes back to the door. He says, "Look, you've got no priors. It's 4:30. It's Friday. It's been a long week. My shift ends in 30 minutes. If you can come up with some reason I've never heard before as to why you were doing what you're doing, I'll let you go." He sits there a second. He says, "My wife left me for a cop 3 years ago. I thought you were bringing her back." Police officer smirks, looks at his license, says, "Have a nice day, sir." The moral of the story is always be prepared. So anyways, I'm with Cyber MDX. I appreciate the time or a few minutes this morning. Thanks, Dave. The challenges that we all face are quite diverse. You've got the IT security people trying to lock everything down. You've got biomedics trying to keep everything unlocked so they can protect the patients. You've got the C-suite trying to manage everything in between. What I wanted to ask though right up front is, how many of you are overstaffed and over budget as far as this year is concerned? You have too many people and too much money to spend. I get the same amount of hands every time. So everybody's out there struggling, trying to figure out how to solve some of the problems. And everybody's got a lot of single source products out there. I heard the other day someone mentioned something about, I said something about single source. Yeah, somebody mentioned silver bullet. So the first time I hear that their product is a silver bullet, I basically want to hear from you and turn off the call. Because there is no silver bullets. Silver bullets kill vampires. Last time I checked, none of us are fighting vampires yet. So as ransomware increases and as budgets go down and there's more single source products, are always challenged on how to manage all of that. I've been in the security sales business working with healthcare facilities for over 15 years. I like what Cyber MDX does. I invite you all to come by and stop and see us. We specifically focus on finding and determining all of the managed and unmanaged devices on your network. So if you have devices out there that security doesn't know about that needs to protect, we can find those for you. And that's specifically our focus, is those managed and unmanaged devices. A passive solution that sits in your network, collects data continuously, provides you reports. I've had customers tell me they overlay some of their other products, whether it's vulnerability scanners and so forth. So we tend to have a multi-layered approach to help protect organizations. So anyways, I didn't want to go too long. This is not my time. Stop by and see us. We're going to have a session at 3:15 later today, a little bit more detailed. You can't stop by. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay? Thank you.
Well, all I'm going to say is if it was a Corvette engine, you got a 100 gear, 100 miles an hour. All right, well, thanks. I guess you want me to wear this. Is that true? Can you guys all hear me? Can you hear me okay?
We'll turn it on for you.
Well, that'll probably help. Listen, is there a biomed in the room? All right, how's that better?
Yeah, there we go.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming today, and taking some time out of your busy schedules and coming to see what we have to say. I guess my first question is who's aware of the fact that our industry is in trouble? Anybody know that? Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why that's the case, but I'm going to share a couple of reasons today that I think hopefully the mayor can not be aware of, and we talk about how we can help each other and how we can do something about it. So the three topics I want to cover is who's aware of what's going on with the FTA. We look about what's going on with the FTA. See one hand, two hands, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's better than what it used to be. It's usually more people nobody knows about it. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on there. And what parallels is a little bit around what's called wait to repair. And that's a little bit about what that's about. and talk a little bit about resources. At any point, please, if you have a question, just interrupt, or you can just shout it out, whatever the case is. So I want to just a little infomercial, a little bit about TKA. We're an outsourced solution for chemical engineering. If you know anybody who's looking for anybody, I feel like they're the best. I work for all of them, so I can feel this one's the best. But we do consulting services. We have a real-time location system that we think is really very good, very reasonably priced. Does a lot of great things. We also offer reliable equipment disinfectant, where we'll clean the equipment between uses, which is a pretty big thing right now. This thing called COVID, which is why we're all wearing these on faces. All right, let's talk a little bit about why we're here. It's about. So, anybody here, by the way, work for OEM? Okay, I didn't say what I wanted. All right, this all started in 1996. Some of you weren't even around at that time, so you know it's very but some of us were along there. Anyways, so in 1996, the OEMs went to Congress, went to the FDA, went to people and said, "This we got a problem. There's people working on our other equipment, and we don't want them to." You know, well, why not? Well, because they're taking our market share. Wham, go away. So that worked out pretty well for us. We spent a lot of time and energy trying to convince it, but essentially we got it and got past it. Let's roll the camera forward. 2006, we did the same thing on back. So listen, you don't like people working on equipment. It should only be us. Well, why not? Well, we're losing revenue. Wham, get out of here. Well, guess what? I have to give the credit, and I really would commend them because this time they did great. They came back and they said, "We don't want people working on equipment." And oh, by the way, because they're killing it. And you guys killed anybody that needed for labor and medical equipment, of course. You made it kill for all the reasons. That's right. But in regards to servicing medical equipment, I'm hoping on you killed like you haven't. The fact of the matter is that everybody's familiar with PCRI. In gazillions of millions of records related to our service reports, it was less than 0.00001 examples where a piece of medical equipment actually was even potentially have caused a problem for a patient. We don't cause problems. We do what we do very well. But the OEMs are pushing hard against it. And they actually did, just tell you a story about where we're at, what's going on. But this started in 2016. We're in 20, and we don't even get fighting this thing. So let me tell you a little bit about it. By the way, if this comes, which they were able to do what they want to do, their actual resolution of this whole thing was, if you didn't work for OEM, you couldn't work on medical equipment. Essentially, we either have to go get a job with the OEM, or you can get out of it. It's pretty scary. Think about what the cost would be to the healthcare in general. So here's how it starts. Anybody ever heard of MITA? Okay, yeah, those of you who did. Yeah. So MITA is a Medical Imaging Technology Association. It's a group of manufacturers. It's like over 140 manufacturers. Siemens, Philips, GE. I don't care who you are. If you're a huge manufacturer, you can do on MITA. They have money. They're spending over $5 million a year fighting the disease that we're dealing with right now. It's pretty significant. So in, I think it was 15, 16, whatever it was, they put in this, well, actually, I'll get to it in a couple days. So there's, they go to Congress and they said, "Listen, we have a problem. We don't want people working on our equipment. You know, anybody's not related to manufacturers specifically. We're killing people, it's causing problems." And then, I mean, you know, Congressman, where they start talking to people who are killing people, like I said, they got really smart this time. They thought about people's lives, safety, quality. People are listening. So a couple of congressmen, like they're up, "Hey, we're going to get behind this, we're going to solve it." So they brought it to Congress, and it's thing called the Youth Bill, and they submitted it in that. And fortunately, because nobody knew what was happening, it was just talking about on this 300, 400, 500 page document where this would happen to all of us at the time, you know. And literally, as they say, in the bottom of the ninth inning, 2 outs left, Francoeur works for IMERS. Anybody know what IMERS is? Okay, so some of you do. IMERS is about 100 organizations internationally do on the IMERS, and it's basically manufacturers, remanufacturers, and service providers, primarily in the imaging space, but they do others as well. But they represent our industry in the ISO world not necessarily directed things like what I do, where Eric Mark offers to actually the others, where they outsource the whole program. These guys pretty much specialize in just one type of equipment, one modality. But in any event, they're a fairly large organization, international, and their attorney, Mr. Rocco, great guy, literally stood up in Congress just before they were about to sign. Said, "Do you understand what you're about to sign? This looks like." And so they listened to him, and fortunately, they didn't sign it. They said, "Well, wait a minute, we got to take a step back and take a look at it." So what happens then? Congress goes, "All right, well, we're hearing one thing. You're saying something different. We need something to figure this out." So I'm sure you've all heard of something called the FDA. So what does Congress do? They come over to that meeting and say, "Go look into this. Go figure out what's happening." And now the clock starts. So the FDA, through the Center of Disease and Radiology Health, they have to decide. They're part of the 510(k) submission. They're part of the FDA, where they have to validate the piece of equipment is going to be safe, it's going to do what it says it's going to do, and they do all that. Well, they have a responsibility, right? So their mission is to make sure that they protect the patients, and that's why they validate and make sure that these equipment could be used. And their vision is that we as consumers are always comfortable and confident that we can walk into the healthcare organization and know that the equipment that's going to be used on us meets a certain level of criteria, it's going to be safe, it's going to do what it says it's going to do. Well, they have that responsibility, and we pay for that through the government. And so, because of Mike going to Congress and telling them that we're killing everybody, I'm not knowing any better, just happy to listen to it. And because they took it to Congress and tried to get it submitted to a bill that nobody knew about, but we were able to stop it, and they punted it over to the FDA said, "We forgot to do this." The FDA, I was actually involved back in the video for early days, working with the hematology manufacturing company down in Switzerland. And so I was involved in the 510(k) submission process. It's pretty arduous. There's a lot of things that we have to do to make sure that the device can get passed. And so, I mean, it's pretty serious. But the FDA only looks at a piece of medical equipment to validate that it does what you say it does. They don't necessarily look to see whether or not it's going to do anything to necessarily improve or not improve patient safety. So when it comes time to start to evaluate what we do and how well we do it, honestly, it's out of the league. I probably wouldn't say that, but they would tell you that they really don't understand what we do or how we do it. So that became another level of complication, you can imagine. So, anyways, in March of 2016, when the FDA said, "All right, we got to get a sense of what the heck it is that we're talking. You know, what are we doing? Where do we start?" So they got who was involved and knew anything about the fact that they put out a document where they were asking for people to give them your perspective from where you sit. It didn't matter whether OEM, ISO, HTO, and we know what HTO stands for, Healthcare Delivery Organization. That's a fairly determined in our industry, by the way. They just came up through this process. You didn't need me. But they went to everyone. Didn't matter. Anybody's individual that even cared to respond. They put out 7 things. They want to know, what is your opinion of the definition of service, remanufacturing, refurbishing? There were 7. I can't remember them all. But anyways, these are the kind of things that we got back, right? So they want to know what are your concerns? What do you think is the issue in terms of what we're doing? So see if we can play the game that we're saying. So one of the responses was, services are regulated by CMS, certified by the Joint Commission of States. Who do you think would have been somebody that would have responded to that? It was an in-house program, right? So it was somebody saying, "Look, guys, we don't need you regulated. Leave us alone. We already have the Joint Commission or state or CAP or the states, Title 22, whatever the case is. We already have it. Leave us alone." Service conducted outside the quality system presents unnecessary risk. That. So you can see, I mean, so this is in essence. So Kate Middleton, who works for the FDA, she's only took all the responses, not to give exact responses they had. It wasn't as many as I would have liked it to have been, but they did have a significant number of responses. And she pretty much put them in these categories. So here again, gee, there's a surprise. Go from one end to the other, and everybody's got their own opinion. There's still no real data to support it. So this is interesting. In October of 2016, so they put out that document, they got all the responses, they put that accumulation of data back together. And then we don't know anymore now than we did before. I got an idea. Let's invite a whole bunch of people to Washington, come to the FDA building. Anybody here happen to attend, or know anything about it, or know anybody that attended? I'm gonna tell you a cute little story. I literally just made this slide this morning because I was trying to rehearse again, pretend I was gonna do this. It reminded me, it was like, this is kind of like, it's really good. If you can't picture this huge room, I mean, probably the size of this whole floor downstairs. There's over 400 people in this room. Literally on one side of it is an island, it's like a church, it's like an island, it's right down the middle. And on one side, there are all these people that are wearing suits, ties, and really expensive briefcases, and leather-bound folders, and all kinds of stuff. On the other side, there are us. And literally, we look like we do in this room. We were not cohesive. We did not have an opportunity to talk to each other. We did not have an opportunity to find each other. And it really was, it was apparent. It was painfully apparent. And I mean, it was a really big turnout. There were over 400 rooms. It was so big that they actually had 2 or 3 other rooms where they had monitors where people could go sit and listen, but not actually part of it. And this thing took place over 2 weeks. And the OEMs literally, I'm telling you guys, you gotta understand, this is serious. Anybody have an idea as to how big they're estimating our industry is worth right now? Anybody want to guess? Yeah, somewhere between 10 and 17 billion dollars in our industry. That's a significant amount of money. And the OEMs want it all. And so they literally are spending millions of dollars to hire the lawyers to come and try to get it so that we can't work on the equipment. They put up a pretty good case. What was interesting was they had, I forget exactly the numbers, someplace between 5 or 7 pictures, where they literally brought pictures in from their organizations where some of their employees took a picture of a piece of equipment that obviously wasn't serviced properly. There was one that was an anesthesia device that had a windscreen holding on the bellows assembly. There's another one where it was a piece of duct tape. I don't know if you're like I am, but as I sat in the audience and looked at this stuff, at these pictures, I thought, well, how do I know it wasn't one of your manufacturers? I mean, it's a nice picture, but it doesn't prove anything. No. And so it was pretty interesting because, I mean, we had executives, healthcare organizations, we had everybody in the industry that, has been in it forever, that, was passionate about it, emotional. They got up here and they presented their perspective again in this fashion as opposed to that fashion. But we got up to the point where it's like, damn, we're not going to solve this. This isn't going to give us an answer. After 2 days, 400 or 500 people presenting time after time and case after case, example after example, healthcare administrators standing up talking about the fact that Safe Medical Devices Act, which I know everybody is familiar with. That is and hospitals, literally hospital administrators saying, not saying we don't necessarily report every single SMDA occurrence because we don't want people to know that we have accidents. So I got to tell you, life wasn't really very close. It wasn't going very well. It was causing problems, but it was what it was. And we got past it because we did, and nothing really got resolved. So here's what did come out of it. So through the efforts of the request for information, through the meeting that we had in the FDA, and through sundries of the FDA looking into stuff, I will tell you that, and this is how I categorize it, the FDA gave us an olive branch. They really did. I can't say this per se, say it. This is just Dave Francoeur's opinion. Nobody take it as gospel. I feel like the FDA understands and is working with us. I'm trying to couch that as well as I can. They're not coming out saying that we're right, but they're not saying that we're wrong. And one of the things that they've done demonstrates that to me, which is to me a win. I'm taking it as a win. Don't take it away from me. Don't agree with me. But the win for me is they came out and they defined it this way. You can see what they said, there's service and there's manufacturing. Those are, they actually distinguish them differently and they call them out and actually define them. This is an FDA defined differentiation. The biggest thing here is that what we need to take away from is that all of us have grown is, remanufacturing means you've taken a piece of medical equipment and you're not just servicing it. You've done something where you've altered the manufacturer's specifications and or you've altered the use and intention for what that device was initially designed and intended for. You understand what I just said? Are there any questions or thoughts around what I just said? Because there's a huge difference. Servicing, you may not use the actual manufacturer's part to put back in to get it back to working the way it's intended and originated. You may not do it exactly as the manufacturer said you should do it, but in fact, when you return that, when you fix that device and you return it back to service, it is with the intention that it meets the manufacturer's specifications and it's going to be used for what it was intended for when it was originally designed and built. Remanufacturing says you're going to alter it slightly or significantly different from its intended use. Do you guys all understand the distinction? And I don't believe anybody in here probably does remanufacturing. Because if you do, first thing you need to understand is we've taken this off the table. The FDA says if you remanufacture, we're going to handle you in a different way. And if you service, which is 90% of us in the industry, we're going to handle you in this way. We all fall in this category. And the greatest thing about this is the FDA stated when they define this, if you're a servicer, you're okay. 90% of what we use, high quality, good safety, and everything's cool. So I don't know about you guys, but I told them that. Now, there's one little caveat conversation that we had. They also said, but we can't prove they do not have problems. Right? I mean, it looks to me like you guys did a good job. I can't see anything that demonstrates they're not doing a good job, but I don't have anything concrete or evident to prove they are. So I need you guys to go figure out what that is. So here comes the next phase of the whole thing. So the FDA, yes, sir.
Where do you look for the third-party parts used in service?
Where I live in it?
No. Well, what is the your opinion about using the third-party part? Will it doesn't affect the specification of the by manufacturers, but how do you look at it when?
Yeah, I can tell you that question is asked regularly as we have this discussion. The FDA is responsible, and I agree with this. It's your responsibility to make sure that part is up to the manufacturer's specifications in order to put it back in. So what I'm saying is we can't knowingly, intentionally make it so that it's less quality than what was originally intended for. The other thing I would caution you all on, if you are doing the expected, don't ever say it's better than the manufacturer. That's a really dangerous conversation. It's equal to, not equal to or better, and it's definitely not worse. It's equal to what the manufacturer's recommendation is. But so does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that it meets the requirements and specifications. As long as it doesn't, then you're fine. And you stay within the service definition.
I mean, what's wrong with saying better? You know, if you had a better battery that had longer life, what would be the downside of doing something?
The FDA, and listen to what I'm about to say, because I'll deny I said it afterwards. So the FDA's response is if you say it's better, you got to prove it. And in fact, you might be remanufacturing. You follow that? You follow what I just said? So what you're saying is you're better than the manufacturer. You've done something to make it better with the manufacturer design, then you remanufacture it. You should be done. So don't say it. At least that was the advice I got from Dr. Sherman and the others at the FDA. That's the reason. It's because I've always said my whole career, it's like, oh, it's as good or better. Well, it actually is better than, what does that mean? Should we be looking at it across the industry? Yeah. So really opens up a can of worms for you.
Basically saying because of that definition, at that point, you stop that type of conversation.
Yeah, it's not, so what do you mean better? So should we go resubmit for 5 things? We have to rewrite the manual. Well, it's just, so interesting enough, so we get to the next level, right? So after they've come up with the definition, now it's cool. Now we're like, okay, so I'm telling you, as the FDA, we're comfortable with the fact that you guys are, by and large, let's be honest, not everything's perfect, not every OEM is perfect, not every non-OEM is perfect. But we believe that by and large, you guys are good. But to be candid, I can't prove that. And I'm asking you guys as an industry, the FDA came back and said, I'm asking you as an industry, OEMs, to everybody else, I'd like you guys to go figure it out. Go help us understand, excuse me, what do we have, why do we have it, and how can we demonstrate that what we're doing is a good thing? So we said, okay, kind of. So what they did was they said, so let's talk about what that looks like. So they did what I thought was pretty cool. They invited 100 of us to come to Washington for a 2-day meeting. Day one, and they tried, as far as I know, they tried to make it a fair and equitable representation. So they had ISOs, they had OEMs, they had HTOs, they had parts manufacturers, software manufacturers. They got as much of an equal representation as they could of 100 people that showed up. The first day, we literally sat around a table like this, 10 of us, and they assigned a seat, and they tried to get equal representation at each table. At the delineation that I was just showing you guys a few minutes ago in terms of OEM, ISO, this and that. And what they did was they gave us, there were 10 tables. They gave each one of us a different scenario of a servicing opportunity. Everything you could ever imagine in 10 scenarios. And they asked each one of us to sign from the moment we got the phone call to complete, finish repair, up through documentation. And they gave us a half a day to get that done, and then they gave us a half a day to present. And it was pretty eye-opening. I mean, it was astonishing the way different people represented their perspectives in terms of the OEMs, CEOs, ISOs, software people, the whole bit. And like I said, it really wasn't. I hadn't thought about it in that respect. I've been in this for 35 years. So it was really cool. It really was good. A lot of great information. So day two, they invited 25 of the 100 to come, and this is not a really good representation, but I tried to just give a picture of the imagery. 25 of us sat in front of the room in a U shape. And then they had the FDA people, 2 seats in the middle. And around the room were all the other representatives, so the OEMs. So like Mida was there, there were ISOs in the room. There were associations, Amy and Imers was there. 25, again, tried to represent. And for the whole day, the remaining 75 people, as well as people that were on conference calls, could ask us questions sitting at the table around our perspective of how we felt the industry was, where the strengths, where the weaknesses were, where we could try to figure out how we could address the concerns that we had related to the industry and the notion that we were doing less to say for quality services. And again, it wasn't directed or pointed at anybody because we're all sitting in the room. It was more or less open-ended questions to try to define it. And it went pretty well. From that, what you need to understand, what I'm going to tell you is that the 25 people that sat at the table, what came away was the FDA decided that we need to find a way to not only think that the non-OEMs are not providing safe and quality service, but in fact, we need to demonstrate that. So we're asking you, the 25 people sitting at the head of the table here, we're asking you to become a steering committee that we're going to claim is the collaborative community, medical device service and collaborative community, to go out and figure out how we're going to demonstrate and prove that we're doing an okay job. So that's how that started. So 25 became that. That was in December of 2018. We're what? October of 2020. Yeah, last month we finally decided on each other. Let me just tell you, it's been. I'm gonna walk you through the process. I'm gonna try to go a little bit quicker through the slides. Time I got some. Okay, keep me on track. Okay, so here's what happens. The steering committee gets together. We meet at AAMI. Don't hold a minute. So we get together at Amy's a convener for us, right? Because they have most of their money comes from the OEMs, but they are truly supportive of us as an HTM community. So they let us come in and use their new office when we come in. And so we start to establish some criteria around it, right? So initially it was only the OEMs and the ISOs primarily there. And so then what we started doing was we wanted to get joint commissions part of it, the DNP's part of it. And then, then we had to we got hospital representation. And so we ended up, and everything's focused around patient, right? Everything should be focused around patient. And the other thing is that we want to get some patient advocacy. So we started establishing criteria and what things were like. We sat in an all-day meeting and watched. So we started, I'm going to sit through some of these things. But at the end of the day, we start building the whole situation. And so the FDA comes back and they say that there's 4 pretty much areas that they feel, because, obviously, okay, go through, you guys are doing a good job. But at the same time, you saw world hunger and boil the ocean, right? I mean, come on. So they said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you some direction and guidance. We'd like you to focus in 4 major areas, which turned out to be a good idea. So one is around promote adoption of quality management principles. So you guys may or may not remember. First of all, who's familiar with ISO 1345? Right. So do any of you? I mean, I'm sure you've heard the term quality management. Does anybody actually implement them? Anybody actually use a QMS today? Right. Which one? Or just in general use the term? Great. That's awesome. Yes, sir.
We're DND certified, so.
I saw that one perfect. Let me just tell you this. If you don't know what QMS is, if you're not using QMS, no problem, but go figure it out. I guarantee you, whenever this thing comes to fruition, there will be QMS principles that we can. I'll stake my career on it. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but one of the things that has become painfully obvious is we're gonna have to prove that we're doing an okay job, that we're meeting certain standards. It's a lot like the certification exam. How many people are certified? See that? It's great. Everybody should do it. It doesn't mean you're any better, but it means you should. It means that you've done something that you recognize that you understand. Well, if you use a QMS system, that's the same premise. It's like, I understand that there's certain things that I can do with certain levels of demonstrate standardization, consistency, and there's value to it. So it's going to happen. I can tell you that when this first started, when we first got together, FDA had insinuated that everybody was going to be mandated to do 1345. Fortunately, about 2 or 3 months into it, they realized that's probably, they can't do that for a bunch of reasons. One is not everybody can afford it. 2 is nobody said that 1345 is the best choice. 3 is if you guys are familiar with the CMS Joint Commission, whoever it is that your deemed status comes in, you realize that they tell you that you need to hit this objective. They don't tell you how to. So you have the ability to have some flexibility to demonstrate that you can do it different. Well, it's the same tendency here. 1345, if I mandate you do that, well, now you're stuck between these guardrails. Whereas they want to just make sure that you're hitting the tenets of what QMS is all about, that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So one of the gets
Were there any CMMS vendors on the committee, or were they invited? I mean, there's a treasure trove of data obviously embedded in all of your database. Were they plugged in?
yes. But I will also tell you that it's yes, but not like we had hoped, because there's this whole thing in our industry which has got to go away someday, folks. I'm just telling you right now, we got to break down the barriers. Everybody's, it's mine, can't have it. Even though it's here, I got it. We're gonna have to, sooner or later, we're gonna have to start playing nice with each other, right? Or else we're all gonna be in trouble. We got to figure out a way to figure out how to share data, and that's one of the problems. I mean, the OEMs are accusing us of hiding information, and sooner or later we're gonna have to break down that barrier. But yes, they were, but no, not to the degree or hope that we hope. So anyways, QMS is one of the ones that we were working on. Next one was clarify the difference between manufacturing and servicing. That one got accomplished. I showed you earlier. Again, thank you, FDA. Could have, if it had gone a different way, we may not be sitting here. Whoops. Yeah, so these are just some tenets around how we did specifically these things. So the first one was strengthen cybersecurity. I will tell you that everybody in the field feels that cybersecurity is major important. In fact, again, sponsors the same thing. So I don't disagree. I truly don't disagree. But I will tell you on a personal level, cybersecurity and servicing medical equipment are 2 entirely different things. cybersecurity is a component to servicing medical equipment. We have got way too much emphasis on it. It's taking the focus off of what we need to do now. That's my personal opinion. Sorry if I got on my soapbox person. But it's also to the point where the FDA now is carving it back out because it's being looked at in many other forms of fashion. And we decided that we've got people within the steering committee that are on subcommittees for cybersecurity that are voting back, but we're not.
The VA is stepping it up, by the way.
Yeah, they are, and they should.
Yeah.
But again, it's a component like putting it apart, right? So it's only one aspect of service in medical equipment. It's not the aspect, which is what
A lot of our
people.
time.
Sorry.
Takes up a lot of our time,
Oh, yeah. And a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
a lot of taxpayer money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So then this one here, foster evidence developed to assess the quality, safety, effectiveness. And I'm going to talk more about that. That's actually one of the four that I actually chair. So these are just some things. All right. Okay, so this is normally what I would say. So most of the time when I have this conversation, I ask for how many people know about some of the stuff, and like usual, about a lot of handful. So hopefully you're all learning something that you didn't know before, and you're at least going to be aware of it, and maybe start looking forward a little bit more, start reading some of the tabloids and journals and all the other things. But has anybody else noticed anything different in terms of our industry in the last, besides COVID? Has anybody else noticed anything?
Manufacturer training is becoming very scarce in a lot of companies. They're not offering it. They're taking it away from us for the opportunity to do it. So, I mean, we got to get trained to work on stuff, and they say that, but then they don't offer it.
That's one of the tenets that's causing this problem, right? Is that they're saying that they don't want to do that. They don't want to support that. And then they're saying, see, they can't do the job.
They're locking more and more stuff down too, where you can't even get into it.
Sure, you're bringing
They
software.
won't sell us parts either. They won't sell us parts either for some stuff.
You're saying you're not trained, so it's kind of.
Catch-22. Yeah, and the worst part of it is that technically, legally, the CFR 821, everybody's familiar with that. That's a regulation that says they have to do it, but they're not, and nobody's calling them out. Yes, sir.
Yes, to that point, seeing a lot more verbiage and service manuals stating that a maintainer must be manufacturer trained for that item. I also just have a question or two conversations. So we have Congress providing guidance to the federal agency. Saying, hey, I want you to look at this non-OEM service providers. We've never come up like regarding the VA, DoD, military. Did they say like some of the largest healthcare networks in our country by far from in-house maintenance? Was that an awkward conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great question. So one of the coolest things about the government is, you know, you said they won't give you manuals, they won't give you training. It's not so in the government. They're mandated. They have to train their people. They have to give them manuals. So the answer is yes, but it doesn't necessarily help our situation. And so Kurt Vink, who oversees that whole thing, I mean, he's fully engaged, involved in helping out however he can, but he's in a different world because he gets all the training he wants. He gets any of the manuals that he wants, so it's not necessarily an issue for him. But yes, we are looking at all those different things because they are all having a significant impact and all varying levels. Yes, sir.
But doesn't that speak to the requirement that if they can't prove that the VA is having issues with working on certain units, that is the OEM that need to comply with CFR?
Yeah.
And not an issue with the critical is it working?
Yeah, so let me respond to something else you alluded to that. So part of the issue is one of the things was there, you know, again, we talked about the fact that if we went all the way to Z, they were going to shut it down. So if we go back somewhat down the road, one of the things was, well, we're going to see audit. Well, I mean, candidly, how often do you think that's going to happen? I mean, there's thousands of little mom and pop organizations that are all providing service. How are they ever going to be able to go on audit? So it's never going to happen. So that doesn't. And so, you know, it's a struggle. And again, there is a regulation that says they're mandated to give you the tools and the essence that you need to be able to service that equipment, yet they don't. And there aren't enough resources to go out and, you know, go hold that. And so that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, yeah, just your third
That's what we use, that's how we get ourselves.
Yes. And a lot of times I'll say, I mean, not that I had that personal experience here, but I did, and people talk about it. I would say that it's awesome. People say, yeah, we're gonna train people. And they set them up with training they want to use here for. So there's it's all kinds of things that happen. I'm gonna say, there's some point later where I'll say it again, and I'll say it now. I can solve this problem tomorrow. I really could. And let me tell you how to do it. If I can get every single healthcare organization in the country to agree for a 3-month term to do that, someone to solve the problem. And here's what we do. Every single piece of equipment that you have in the hospital, from your thermometers all the way to your MRIs, you would go back to every single manufacturer, you would buy a PM on the contract. And then you pick up the phone and say, when you come in, I'll get a videotape and a manual from it. And I'm gonna make sure you do what you say you're gonna do, what you say you're gonna do. They don't have enough resources and they don't even do what they say they do in. And within 3 months, I guarantee you call back and say, okay, let's talk. How can we do it?
Response time too would be like way off. And
They
it
can't
takes
do it. They
a
don't
for
have
big
enough
time.
resources. I mean, you ever hear the expression, be careful what you ask for? You just might get it. If we ever gave them what they're asking for, we'd kill everyone. They couldn't do it. But they just want more of it. So. All right. So, okay, so we talked about the steering committee, and the steering committee primarily is comprised of 25 people. And we're trying to get fair and equal representation. So these are the 5 different categories that we have. Manufacturers, independent service organizations, regulatory compliance agencies, in-house ACOs. As I told you, there's different variations for independent service organizations. There's people like myself, Sodexo, probably trying. But then you got the Irish group, which are people that work on just linear accelerators or just MRI, CT, but we're all ISO. So that's an opportunity in itself. Here's an interesting fact. So Life is a group that caused this opportunity for us and all this fun that we're having. AdMed is the biggest vocal point there is. They have full-time lawyers that do nothing but deal with this. They're the ones that created this and this opportunity. We get to the steering committee, we're in it for a year. This is God's honest truth. For 1 year, we can't agree on charter and we can't agree on antitrust terms. And I'm telling you, 22 of us are saying, I can do that. It's an adjustment, it's a change, it's a tweak, but I can do it. 3 are saying, nope, not good enough. I need it to be further. Want to guess who those 3 are? A year later, guess what? They removed themselves from the steering committee and the whole process. Taking too long, we're not getting anywhere, we're not getting anything done. Are you kidding me? You caused this. You're the reason we can't get out. And that's your reason for leaving, and they have to get out. So they're not even part of it. So who's heard of something called free fair? Yeah, I'm gonna get into it later, but you wanna guess why they're not in the steering committee anymore? And what they're trying to do from a different angle because it didn't get it done here. We'll get back to it in a second. Think about that. Pieces of work with a lot of money, by the way. So this is the makeup today. This is literally the people that sit on the committee. Hard to see, I apologize, but these are different caretakers. He represents stairs. Different groups, right? So myself, here's the ISOs. The top 5-ish are the ones that have the voting rights. Whereas other people are participating, but there's only 5 people that actually get to vote in the categories for these different areas. We're looking for representation. We need more here. We obviously need more here, and we need some in the affiliations and associations. But these are actually the people that are representing it. I show you this for 2. One is if you want to get active, you can. 2 is if you have thoughts or concerns, you can reach out to these guys. You reach out and find out what's going on. Just some real quick. So in that day that we were in, this is I am a picture. I learn from pictures. You show me how to do something, I'll do it. You tell me how to do something, I'll do it. So I advocated while we were together the first time for the day in Washington as a steering committee that we would draw pictures as to the stories, what we're doing, why we're doing. So there's 4 or 5 things, but you can see that what was our purpose, why did we come together, the structure in the community, fair representation in 5 people, 5 different groups. roots, you know, how did we get here and whatnot. So, right to repair. That's where we're going next. So as you can see, there's a representative now, and so again, our manufacturers are coming after us again. They're going at it for different. They didn't win by just going and scaring the hell out of the FDA and whatnot. The FDA phenomenally, fortunately supported us, but they're still looking for opportunity. So they're coming at us again, right to repair. Okay, all right, so hold on, we'll come back to that. Okay, so I guess what I want to do, I want to go back to the 4 groups if I can. So the 4 groups that I talked about was the QMS group. They're going to take 1345, 9001, and some others, and they're going to figure out what's important of those things so that we can start to, you know, have a tenant of what that looks like, how we can do it, where it goes, and then so that we can figure out how to build that, right? So we're going to come up with white papers, best practices, and we're going to figure out what that looks like without actually coming out and saying, you need 1345 and 10,000 cases. So that's a good thing for us as we start that process. There's another one which is it's training. So if we could design what a training would look like, so that we could, so the OEMs couldn't say that we didn't have the right level of training, the appropriate level of training. How would we establish that? What would it look like? So there's a group of individuals from that list that I gave you that are in a subcommittee that are evaluating that, starting to put the essence of what that was about, defining it and putting it together so we can present that back to the team and say, you know, we need to train, and here's the tools. That's what we look like. What's interesting is initially the whole process was all we needed is manuals and software. So let's think of this for a second. This is where I finally got determined to figure out. So if I say I don't want software keys, I don't want manuals. Okay, let's just say we wouldn't have that. If you're a manufacturer, what's the next thing you're gonna do? You're gonna come up with some other thing that prevents us from having what we need to do the job. So I said, take a step back and just say, we need what we need so that we can figure out how to service the equipment to the level that you want to service it, but you're claiming that we can't do that. So we rewrote it and we're basically saying whatever we need could be, as example, tools, manuals, software, whatever the case is. So we backed up on that. Another one that we're working on is it's kind of like definitions, right? So what is it that we're calling what, how, and why, so that we come up with some standard nomenclature, some standard terms. We're looking at, you know, like for repair codes, right? So one of the things we got today, I guarantee if I asked to define a could not locate or an abuse repair code or, you know, a failure or whatever it is, every one of you guys probably do it a little bit different. So if we started trying to accumulate all this information, that's going to be a real challenge. It's going to be hard for us. And once again, we're going to come on and be not cohesive, and we're not going to be able to defend ourselves very well. So we're starting to try to figure out ways we can pull all that together and start to look more like an industry or a profession. And the last one is the one that I have responsibility for that I'm extremely excited about. We are establishing KPIs, key performance indicators, which we feel demonstrate, doesn't matter who you are, could be an OEM, ISO, an HTO, whomever. If you measure these KPIs and you measure them by the way that you define them, and you can establish your benchmarks and thresholds, it automatically to your QMS system, which would demonstrate to anybody that was looking in that you're a organization, that you're doing with some sort of criteria that says that you should be okay to keep doing what you're doing. Does that make sense? And so the group that I'm working with, which I'm real excited about, those group people, we've come up with about 17. And just last week, we decided on 4 initially that we're going to start measuring. We're going to share our databases and try to come up with a threshold benchmark. Yes.
Are you using E256 in there?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. So part of the QMS package is E256, 56, and 1345. To be honest with you, they almost. And so we've already done a crosswalk to show where the correlations are and try to figure out how we build off of that. So yes.
Nick, are you aware of the CMMS collaborative that started with that last year in the conference?
Yeah, you're talking about the one with Carol Davis Smith and Matt Barrett. Yeah, I am. And Carol's probably not, Matt and Carol probably are totally thrilled with me because I said great first effort, but I think it can go further. So yes.
And it will go.
Yeah.
Right.
But
The fact that we're, as far as we are, we're developing a tobacco standard and help standardize it on how people record things, and that'll give us the opportunity to start that process.
completely agree. And good stuff. So yeah. What's interesting is Danielle, you're know that already, so just tell me. So Danielle, one of the things that she just recently got put on, and I'm holding her for, we are holding her person accountable because she's one of the things we have going on. That project you just described and my project, we should be lockstep. Because if I'm sitting here defining and designing a KPI, and yet I'm not taking into account what they're doing, it's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
So, and candidly, I didn't know what was going on, so I did the same presentation in Colorado, only to see Carol's presentation. You know, what? So yeah. So Danielle should have visibility and oversight of all this, so she can make sure that integrate where we can. Yes, thank you. All right, so this is me, nobody else. This is my perspective, and I say that because I don't want to go walking out here going, oh, this is what the FDA said. And I'm only saying that because I don't want to get you in trouble. So this is my perspective of how I did, like I said, that we can solve this problem, or what this problem looks like and roll up as far as I'm concerned. So again, I want these guys to believe, don't go looking for extra. They said it's related to safety and quality. Let's stay focused on safety and quality. So what makes that up as far as I'm concerned? These are things that make it up. The skill set, they're challenging our skill sets and talents, whether or not we have what we need to do the job. Resources, bodies, they're saying that we don't have enough, and we're not advocating them where we need to put them. That's kind of a joke, considering they have a 4 to 6 hour response. Most of the time they can't do it then. Parts, they're saying that we're using less quality, off the shelf and reuse parts and all stuff. Maybe some people are, maybe they're not. I don't know, but that's part of what they're saying. The tools that we don't have what we need, literally tools and or software keys, whatever case is. Funniest thing in the world to me is you go look at some of the manuals, some of the radiology equipment. You look in there and the test equipment they tell you to use, can't even get it in. It doesn't even exist. And yet we're in the fault because we're not doing what they asked us. And what they're asking us to do can't be done. It's interesting.
And then they charge us for it too. Just to get tech support and software keys.
Yeah. And then I believe that, part of it is around geographics and location, right? I mean, so where we are, how we do it, what it is. So that's important. So then, this is, again, remember, I'm a picture guy. Not necessarily a big picture guy. That's how our pictures, how I learn. So this is the picture from my perspective. Our side of the table, everybody's in this room, whatever role we play. This is how I see it, we see it, right? We do nothing all the way up to we 100%. We want it all. I don't even want to name them. Some of the names didn't get that out. No. All right. On the OEM side, guess what they want? They want to sell. They want to service it. They don't want us anywhere near the line. Neither one of us are going to get everything we want. Just ain't going to happen. More or less, it's going to be someplace in between there. And by the way, in 35 years that I've been in this industry, it waffles between 40 and 60%. Some years it's 40% that they own the ownership. Some years it's 60%, and somewhere in between. Fairly reasonable there. What do you say? 35 years. This is the thing. This is where I want to tell you. I'm telling you. I'm convinced. I've been saying this since 1996. If we literally can make it so that they had to do a PM on every single device that they had responsibility for across this whole country, we'd cripple them. They would die on one die. Yeah, so this is what I was telling you, right? Abby Med is resigning, Malia resigned, fill those three out. This reminds me of kids. I never had kids, but I know people that have kids. This reminds me of kids. They go in and they just completely destroy something. They just throw it everywhere and all over the place. And then they just look at us and go, oh, you go clean it up. No accountability whatsoever. You know, what I would love to see happen is the FDA go in. You're walking away from this, problems off the table. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but this is what we're dealing with. So they don't even participate in it. These are the things I was telling you about, the things that we're working on, the 4 different groups. And I think they're great things. I truly believe that, I do believe, listen, every one of you guys have a CMMS package. You don't even look at it. I know you have CMMS packages. I know you have policies and procedures. I know that you guys have dashboards. I know that you report to safety committee or EOC. I know that you all have either DNB, Joint Commission, I think, whoever you got, CAP, AAB. You're already doing it. Probably the only thing you might have to do would be to figure out a way to report it a little bit differently or to manage it when a complaint comes in, to manage it maybe a little bit differently so that it here's something here, but it's not going to be a big deal. It's not a huge undertaking. The coolest thing about it is it gets us to the level where it gets them off our back. They can't say we don't do it. So it's important that we do it. I heard something. So we literally last month, the OEMs get off the committee and we ratify the charter next month. I did that. So sure, we got to get that representation. Remember, I told you we need at least 5. We're trying to get 5 representatives in each area. So that's one of the things that we have a meeting the 15th this month, and that's actually have a meeting next Tuesday for the steering committee. That's going to be one of the focuses of the agenda. Continue the 4 subcommittees, which we're doing, and then establish the steering committee, which is what, like I said, what we're trying to do. So that's where we're at for that. Here's something I guarantee you. I say I guarantee, but I'm pretty well sure. How many people know that the FDA, anybody involved in MOD reporting, by the way, anybody get MOD reporting? 1 or 2. Okay. So are you guys aware of the fact? Do you even know that the FDA literally just changes? See this little box down here? If you got an MDA situation, if you're reporting an occurrence with PC equipment, they just add this. Seen it before? I want to ask you a question. How would you answer that? If a technician out here at HTO and ISO, if they worked on the equipment last, how would you answer that question?
I would say yes, even in-house use or third party. And for those of us that are blind, can you read the question?
Yeah, sure, sorry. What was the device serviced by a third party service provider?
That's really something, but that's there. That really is.
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is that all they want to know is whether you're an OEM or not. That's really what they're asking. But this is really confusing. He presented this on the steering committee last month.
So this is supposed to be for the manufacturer's report.
Well, it's
Because we're doing safe as MPA.
it's for anybody else. Here's the thing. Between you and me, and I can't prove it, nor will I say it out loud. So you're not hearing it. I mean, to me, it's an OEM who's trying to figure out if they can start tying the fact that services, failures are related to non-OEM service. That's what it is. So it really raised. I mean, people went bananas when this came out last week, and it's one of the agenda items for our conversation on Tuesday for this year. The FDA, those basically said we're not to. So
Is that on the voluntary form too?
yeah, and the whole thing is voluntary technically, but they're wanting people to fill it out.
I mean, the manufacturer's required, but not customer. But if we can do a voluntary form.
Yes, sir.
Or the formal instruction, stating, I don't know some people's perspective, so a little bit where I have in-house, the program, I would consider a third party something outside that, something says by a third party other than the manufacturer. Because to your point, that's not very clear.
That's the whole thing that people got all upset about. I mean, the HTOs in particular on the call, like, wait a minute, wait a minute. You know what I mean? I don't consider myself to a third party. So but you are, in this case you are, which is why the question is really misleading. It really shouldn't be stated that way. It really should be the other way around. Did an OEM services class? Yes or no? Well, that's how it should be stated. If you really want to know the answer to this question.
But that's the only, that is just that question.
Yeah, and supposedly there's some language that's going to come out with explaining it. I can tell you that, like I said, a lot of people are pretty much up in arms and yes or something.
The way the question is written, it doesn't say like who last serviced it, but it says who serviced it.
There's all kinds of
It
things.
could be, yeah, I had drill down the block service 3 months ago, but that's completely unrelated to what happened here and what's on your problem.
Yeah. Yes.
This doesn't tell you.
Yes. You know, one of the things.
Just the fact that there's a maintenance question at the onset. And this is the beginning of an RCA, right? And they're already, this is a major maintenance issue.
You got one foot on grease and the other foot's on a banana, as far as I'm concerned. It's taking us in a really bad direction. But this is exactly what I'm telling you. Let's give it 6 to the wall. I mean, that's what this is. You're killing people. Prove that you're not. I mean, one of the things that the FDA, if anybody, I guess no one's there, so I asked, but when we were in Washington for the 2 days at the FDA, first thing that the OEM said was, the reason that you couldn't find any problems was because nobody reported. So all this is, and here's what's gonna happen. Every time we, as an industry, not OEMs, have gone up and said, look, we're doing it. Critically, ECRIs come out and foods with millions of records, less than 0.0000, whatever it is. One incident out of several gazillion million things could even be slightly, and their response was, yeah, well, you know what, you're not looking at it right, you're not doing this, that. What do you think we're gonna say? It's not proven not. You know what people fill it out. So it's just unfortunate people won't take five minutes out. Yes, and
How does that question govern a party that is manufacturing training with first name?
as far as I'm concerned, you still have to fill it out if you want that, you want to go. That's how I'm concerned. That's just my opinion. Don't take that as God. Yeah.
I think that this is where consistency is actually critically important. Because I think if we were doing a good job of that, we could take the offense on this. I mean, when I in-sourced a bunch of the contracts that we had in one of my past lives, what we found other than this contracted equipment was shocking. And our uptime is about 20 to 25% once we took over service on them. So again, if we had our shit together, we'd be able to fight back on this and take the offense. It starts with complete and consistent documentation.
Yes, and I think that's why I'm so excited about the project that I'm working on, because I think, we're gonna finally start putting some meat to the bones in terms of, look, y'all can have your own opinion, and I want to talk about this for days if you want, but I'm a huge proponent of cost of service ratio. Now, I'm actually publishing a paper, and probably gonna come out next week. There's 105 ways to do that calculation, and I'm the first one to do it. But the fact of the matter is, if you and I agree as to how we're going to report it, it actually is a really bad. Now, it may not be compared to everybody else, but for you and I, it can be the greatest thing in the world. And that's what I'm trying to get to. So again, there's all kinds we got data going out of our butts. Every single one of us reports every single thing that happens in our work orders. It's data beyond belief. We just don't ever do anything with it. We don't interpret it right. We don't ever share it. So we can start to put some guardrails around this, and we establish the KPIs on the team. These 4, I feel really comfortable. I mean, I've got 5 major health organizations. These aren't hospitals. These are multiple hospitals with millions of pieces of equipment that we're going to come together, and I'm going to have a pretty good sense of what a benchmark or threshold would be related to these 4 KPIs. You as an individual can be able to go back and look at that and see how you compare it. If you measure it, and I'll give you the definition as to how to measure it the same way. it should be relatively comfortable for you to say, that's a fair comparison. Now, how you do on that is for you to determine, but it's a fair comparison. Yeah. At least that's the intent behind what we're trying to do. So that was interesting. I didn't know we did that. I knew I'd have some fresh for so, okay, let's talk about right to repair. Right to repair. So let's go on. So as I said earlier, what we're doing in terms of the medical device, by the way, really quickly, if you remember correctly, I saw a medical device services collaborative community. Remember seeing that little red line on through the first slide? Collaborative is no longer doing everything for medical device services community. Real quick story as to why that is. So in order for you to be deemed a collaborative community with the FDA, you literally have to be sanctioned and approved as a collaborative community. There's actually guidelines, a policy, a procedure, a process that you have to go in order to get deemed a collaborative community. So here we are 19 months into this, the FDA tells us last month, oh, by the way, you're not a collaborative community. You have to apply for that, you have to approve that. So we've had to pull it on our title, and we're in the process to actually be deemed and registered and accepted as a collaborative community, at which point then that gives us more weight with the FDA and what we're doing. So I found that interesting and kind of strange. So anyways, going back to this for a second, the right to repair. So they pulled OEMs, Spida, Abiomed, Philips, pulled themselves out of this process. But yet now what they're trying to do is, okay, who's heard of the term right to repair? Right? Okay, great, we all have. I don't know if you realize how significant it is. Right now, at this very moment. Anybody know how many states in this country are actually dealing with this right this second? 15. Now here's the thing. Depending on who's taking it to the court, if we're, and by the way, what's the chances that it's if we're taking it to the court, what do you think we're asking? We want the right to repair. If the OEMs are taking it to court, what do you think they're asking? We want the right to repair. In Massachusetts right now, what's going on is the OEMs were going to fight this thing and basically probably stop it. We went in, there's a group up there from our side, trying to make it so we have the right to repair. Abiomed came back and said, I won't fight it. Strike the language that refers to medical equipment. So guess what? If that happens, there's no telling what can happen. I'm telling you, this is really big. I've been called by 3 or 4, Phoenix, Massachusetts, Texas. That's really I think of them. But I've been called to see if I can, give my opinion and inputs to it. Because I'm telling you, there are lots of attorneys around this country right now fighting this thing. Some of the things we got on our side is the audio, cars, whatever, automobile, that's what I'm trying to say. Automobile, they went through this for a while when they fought, right? But I'm telling you, it's scary and it's out there, So yeah, I guess we did a survey and 222 HTM professionals denied the fact that, and you guys all admitted this too, that we're not getting what we need to do the job. And yet they're telling us we're not doing a good job. Okay, here's another one. I just got this yesterday. This is pretty cool. This to me is going to be monumental in our industry. So, Da Vinci is being sued. Anybody hear about that? I didn't know something about this. They're being sued. This is big. Because Da Vinci, if any of you guys deal with them, they're probably, as much as the high-end imaging people are paying them to, these guys are like, they're just unreasonable. It just doesn't happen ever, period, in the end. Well, depending on the outcome of this, I think, and I said this to the attorney that sent this to me, I think this is going to be rough. This could be huge for us. If they lose this, if we win this, I think it's going to have an impact on everything. So I'm really looking forward to how this turns out. But again, I know you know this because it just happened. I'm just trying to, okay, so last topic, let's talk about resources. How many people in this industry, anybody know, that do what we do, whether it's program, what is it? 45,000. Anybody want to guess how many are not going to be in this industry within the next 3 years, 4 years, because of retirement?
20,000, 30,000.
Maybe 8 to 10,000 of us are going to be retiring in the next 3 to 5 years. And we want to guess, that's on average 2,000 to 3,000 going out a year. We want to guess how many are coming in a year,
200 at best.
200 to 300. 23 schools closed last year. We're in trouble, folks.
I didn't know about it until I actually worked in the hospital, like food nutrition.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. That's the problem.
Yeah, I'd be happy to tell you how I got it. I was drinking, we'll have that conversation later. Yeah, it was, but I mean, 35 years old. But yeah, we're in trouble. I mean, we have people back in the church chomping at our heels and say, get the hell out of here, I can't do my stuff. And we don't have enough people to get it done. And if you think, I'm just telling you right now, I'm gonna be sitting in my golf cart looking at industry as this thing goes in a couple of years, but if you think you're gonna keep doing what you're doing today in 5 years, you better think it ain't gonna happen. You won't have the resources, you won't have the support, you won't have the money, you will not be able to do what we're doing today. Just get that, you're gonna start thinking about figuring out what you do. I got. I haven't had any much time. So, I think that's about it.